Sally, thanks for coming on. Excited to have you join Voices of Enablement. It's nice to finally meet you in person last week. That was fun. So obviously the goal of today is to kind of talk through the topic of why is enablement struggling in today's climate, and how do we elevate enablement from this like more, I'd say, support function as what it's perceived to be into more of a strategic function. So excited to get into it. I know you and I have spoken on a couple different topics already, just in person and even previous to recording. So I think this is going to be a good one. But before we jump in, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then we'll get into the topic.
Sounds great. Well, Will, it was really nice to meet you last week at the event in Atlanta, where we were able to network amongst lots of enablers, learn some really cool stuff, share some ideas. That was just so much fun. But this is where I do intro. I'm sorry.
You're good. Yeah, intro. You're good.
Okay. So my name is Sally Ladrach. I am based in Atlanta, Georgia, and I've been in enablement, or roles that were enablement but not called enablement, in combination for about 5 years, and another 5 years or so in the marketing world. And currently my role is at a company called Thoughtbot. We are a software design and development consultancy, and I'm our sales enablement and marketing manager. So I have this really interesting role that, yeah, I wear a lot of hats. It's kind of a very interesting hybrid of a role. And it's interesting because I get to do work across what at most companies is sort of two separate teams, right? Marketing and enablement. Yeah. So it's given me some unique perspective, and yeah, it's been fun.
I love it. I love it. Well, so let's get into it, because I think even with that perspective, it probably allows you to see things a little differently, even through the enablement lens, because you have eyes on other parts of the business. Not to say that other enablers don't, but you actually physically have ownership of other parts of the business, including enablement. So it's a really interesting kind of, I guess, perspective is the best way to put it. Interesting perspective that you have on this. So the reason we're doing this, as I mentioned a moment ago, is times are tough, recession or whatever you want to call it. Something's going on. The people are struggling. And unfortunately, a lot of the companies who are doing these RIFs and reductions in workforce are turning to enablement first. And those are usually the people that are losing their jobs first. And so we wanted to set up this space to kind of talk through, why is that? Is there ways to avoid that? What should enablement be doing to maybe elevate themselves? What are the things that we should be focusing on? What are some tactical things that we can be doing just within our day-to-day job? And so love having people like you on who've been doing this for a while, different perspective, like we just talked about, and kind of talk through some of these things. So to start it off, very general question, how do we move enablement from more of this like strategic function, support function, to more of a strategic function in the organization? What are some maybe things that we should be thinking about in order to do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's the one that we're all trying to figure out, right? Yeah. I think from a sort of what do I do in my day-to-day perspective, one thing that I'm always looking for and asking myself is, are the things that I am either executing on or being asked to execute on in line with the priorities of the business?
Bingo.
Right. That has to be where everything starts. Because if you're not aligned to that, then when it comes time to do that riff, right, you're either moving the business forward in a strategic way or you're not. And you can't move the business forward in that strategic way if you don't know what the strategy is, or you're not deeply connected to it.
Yeah, I think that's it. I really do. I mean, there's obviously a lot of other things that you can do, but to me, that should be basis number one, the foundation of anything you do. I'm curious, how would you recommend finding those things out? Like, who are the people you should be talking to, or what are the questions you should be asking internally, if you aren't doing it already, to figure out what does the business care about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the what does the business care about question usually resides at the executive level. The unfortunate thing for many enablers is that a lot of us are sitting in a sales enablement manager or sales enablement associate, or maybe in a more junior role where you don't necessarily have access to leadership in a way that you would want. Now, some companies are really small. You may have a direct line to the CRO. You may have a direct line to someone else in the C-suite. But in many companies, it's huge, and you don't have that direct line, right? So, I think the most important thing is to do what I think most enablers should be doing, is build those cross-functional bridges with your
Yep.
leadership, right? And ask the question, what are the priorities? Hopefully they're sharing that with the business already, and whatever the grand vision is for the year, whether it's through
All
OKRs,
hands.
goals, other things. We're rolling out this new product and we need to sell X amount of it, right? Hopefully you're able to see a lot of those things, even if it's not directly from leadership. But I think that being able to ask the C-suite, being able to ask reps, being able to ask your cross-functional partners what's important to them
Mm-hmm.
is also important, alongside knowing what those business priorities are. Because ultimately, whatever you do inside of your function, you have to be serving the people that you're working with. And if you don't know what's important to them, you're going to fall short.
Yeah. Excellent point. I think at the end of the day, you got to figure out who are your customers, which in
Mm-hmm.
enablement's case, it's usually reps, right? I mean, that's going to be your primary customer. And so how do you align the business needs to their needs, and kind of being that bridge between the two, I think is really, really important. I'm curious, in your role, since you're kind of marketing and enablement, who are some of the cross-functional people that you're working with? Because traditionally, right, an enablement leader would say my cross-functional partners would be marketing, right? Product marketing, probably more specifically, rev
Mm-hmm.
ops, maybe CS, potentially. But like, who are you talking to on a regular basis, and what does that cadence look like? Actually, I'm curious. Is it weekly? Is it biweekly? Is it quarterly? Who are you talking to, and what does that cadence look like?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll preface this by saying that we as a company are pretty weird compared to the way that most,
Fair
SaaS
enough.
organizations are structured out there.
Yep.
But I am the cross function in many ways,
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
In terms of structure, I actually report directly to our CEO.
Crazy.
Um,
It's awesome.
I have a sort of counterpart that focuses on marketing stuff,
Hmm.
and she is uh, I'm trying to remember her exact title, but she's essentially like our marketing director. She also is a fractional CMO for some
Okay.
of our clients. So,
Cool.
small startup, doesn't have marketing function, but needs to be able to tell people about their product. She will step in and actually help them structure that marketing program.
Yep.
So the other sort of big cross-functional partner I work with is our managing directors. And our managing directors are by and large our salespeople.
Mm.
They are not only responsible for bringing in business, though, they are responsible for running their division of Thoughtbot. So we have, one division that focuses on, for example, creating new products. We have
Mm.
another one that's focused on improving existing software products. And each of those managing directors is not comped by commission, right? Like a
Mm.
normal salesperson would be. They're actually responsible for P&L. They're balancing the budget of what they
Wow.
bring in and the utilization of their consulting team and all these different things. So it's like I'm reporting
Crazy.
to several CEOs almost.
Yeah,
um,
100%. It's like multiple business units, which is,
yeah, so it's very
yeah,
unique.
yeah, that's cool though. So then how often are you, I mean, I guess in that scenario, you're probably supporting them. So you're probably meeting with them weekly?
Yeah, so we work in a way that is sort of similar to how a lot of product, like software product teams are set up, in that we
Okay.
have a biweekly planning meeting where we say, these are the priorities, these are the things that we're going to do in this quote unquote sprint, right? These are the things we're going to get done,
Yep.
whether it's a small piece of moving a bigger project forward, or maybe we're going to complete a larger project in that 2-week span. We actually have that planning meeting and we meet together, we talk about that stuff. So
Cool.
from a project management, let's get stuff done perspective, that's what that planning meeting is for. But we also have another meeting called a retro, which again, in the
Okay.
software product world, people will be very familiar with what that is. But essentially in that retro, we say, hey, what are the things that we need to work on? What needs to be improved? What problems are people running into? And we have a very foundational value of trust and honesty. And so when people come to that meeting, they're ready to share what those things are, and we're ready to sort of discuss
Mm.
it and come up with action items together. And I think that's been a really effective way of being able to suss those things out, because in my prior roles, that was stuff that I had to usually do on sort of an individual basis, right? Build those relationships, build those trust with this sales leader and that sales leader, and this director and that director.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a very different way to work, but I've been enjoying it.
I think one of the more under discussed facets of the rep to enabler relationship is feedback. Actually, I think
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get measured a lot or talked about a lot. right now it's very trendy and buzzwordy to talk about ROI and impact and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's valid and it's fair and it's definitely worth discussing and those things are important. But I think the feedback part is maybe more important in some ways because if I as a rep am in a specific deal and I need something or I'm preparing for a conversation on pricing and I can't find what I need and all that kind of stuff, and then I come to you and I don't tell you what I need or why it was fell short of what I was looking for, then like
Mm-hmm.
how do you know what to help me with?
Yeah.
And that part is so much it feels under discussed, but like maybe the most beneficial thing that we could be talking about. So
Yeah.
I love that foundation of trust. I think it's very, very important. And having that cadence where you are getting that feedback on a regular basis about what do we do well, what do we not do so well, what can we improve on. It's huge. It's freaking huge. And salespeople aren't going to come out and do it just
Nope.
because, right? You have to create that almost culture
Yeah.
of feedback. So
100%.
I love it. I love that. It's really good.
I would say that some of the most successful programs, initiatives, anything that I've run, it's all started with seller feedback.
Uh-huh.
Um, when, for example, one of my roles, I was in charge of the onboarding program.
Yep.
I made it a point to meet regularly with every single new hire as they were coming on board and checking in and saying, what do you wish was better with this experience so far? Did this tool suit your need? Are these learning modules too long? Is this too much at once?
Yeah.
Was this session actually helpful or was it a waste of time? Right.
Yeah.
And being able to check in with reps and even just offering support, that goes a long way. And when you build that trust, what I found is that the more that reps trust you, the better and more real the feedback is that you get.
100%. That's so true.
Because there's stuff that they won't tell their manager, that they won't tell, obviously not going to tell the CRO, but in sales enablement, we're like, the cool aunt or uncle.
That's
right?
true. We'll
I'm not
slide
your
you that. Yeah.
boss. So you can be candid with me and you can share that stuff with me. And I'm not gonna go tell anybody, but it certainly is going to influence how I design this program or this piece of content to ensure that it's actually meeting your needs as a seller, because it's going to be a waste of everybody's time if whatever I go create is not adopted.
100%. And it's not that the sellers are smarter. It's just that in that moment, they know what they need, right?
100%.
It's like, I've never said this before, but you were talking about this. I was thinking about this concept. We have one of the most groundbreaking things ever in customer success was the introduction of the NPS score. And it is like, the pinnacle of what we monitor. Well, some things have like been added and changed recently, but still we are all monitoring our NPS score. And it is like a token. It's like a badge of honor people wear. We don't do that for enablement programs, but like your customer is your rep. There should be some sort of like feedback loop to capture
100%.
that. I'm sure there's some
Yeah.
enablers out there doing it. And if you are listening to this and you do that, like please show us your process because I think it's a really cool idea. Never thought about it until this moment actually, but I really love it. But it's all in this feedback thing. I think it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah. And I think that some people might hear that and say, well, that's great. But what if I have hundreds of sellers inside my organization? What if I don't have the time to go meet with people one-on-one?
Yep.
And that's a very real thing.
Yep.
What I would say is maybe get creative, find some ways, maybe there's a lot of organizations that have formed like a sales enablement council almost.
Yep.
And I think that that's a great way to get some of that feedback. What I have found to be successful at scale, when I was at Local IQ / USA Today, I was running programs for a group of about 750 sellers and managers. That is a lot of people to try to get feedback from.
Yep.
Right. But one thing that I did in sort of the biggest program that we ran was I was very consistent with surveys, and not just, hey, we're going to send out a survey after the program is totally over. We did a survey after each session of the program, and it was very short. It took like 30 seconds to do. We made sure that while people were still on that call for that session, we said, here's the link, go fill it out right now before you do anything else. Because we know if I send it to you 10 minutes from now, it's going to sit in your inbox and go to graveyard. Right. Yeah, exactly. So we did that, and it actually allowed us to iterate on each session and make it better and better. And because of the feedback, because we were asking people what they wanted to learn about, we were able to tailor those sessions so well that I still get sales reps that will message me on LinkedIn and they'll be like, oh, I remember you, like you did that training. That was one of the best sales trainings we ever did. Right. If to me, that's like one of the highest compliments that I can get as an enabler, that I created something that provided value for the audience, for the customer.
I love it. I love it. Well, so let's switch gears a little bit, because you said something a minute ago about, owning onboarding. And I want to dig into this a little bit because I think it's a very important topic. Because a lot of people just assume that's enablement's job and that's all they do, which you and I both know is not true. But I think a lot of people have this perception. Oh yeah, they run onboarding for sales reps. A part of it for sure. The other reason I think it's really important right now to talk about it is because it's probably not happening a ton right now. Right. Most organizations are not actively hiring. Yeah, sure. There's a couple candidates here and there that make it through and, we hire them, but most companies are losing people, not adding people. And so with that, it means a lot of people in enablement's responsibilities are changing. And so I'm curious from your perspective, if you're in enablement and for the last year and a half, a lot of your job has been onboarding, you are now no longer onboarding new reps. How does that change your role? How does that change your responsibilities? What are some of the things that you would be spending your time doing instead now?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that when it comes to onboarding, it should be a reflection of the best practice for your entire sales process, right? Yeah. That is the foundation and the standard by which all of your sellers should be selling. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't really change, or it shouldn't change, between onboarding and what some people call everboarding, right? What people are doing every single day. Mm-hmm. And I think in some companies, those two things aren't necessarily the same. There's like the way that we're taught that we should do things as a seller, and then there's the way that sellers actually do things.
That's pretty much every organization I've been at. So.
And my challenge is that if the way that sellers are actually doing things is more effective than your onboarding program, then you need to take this time where you're not busy onboarding a bunch of people to go fix your onboarding program.
Hot take.
Figure out what's working in your business right now. Go talk to your top sales reps. Go dig into Salesforce and see what industries are winning, what business unit, whatever it is, right? Go find the things that are working. Fix your onboarding program so that you're actually you're taking that time to teach reps stuff they're actually going to use 6 months from now.
Yeah.
And if you have that gold standard, that also gives you a mechanism by which you can say, if somebody comes to you with some new initiative, or we need to update the first pitch deck or whatever, you've got sort of a set of critical assets or critical pieces of things that reps need to know. And those are the things that you keep updated.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yes. It's almost like a playbook, like go and build the playbook. You
100%.
have this like framework that you teach and train and onboarding, but then that, I say this all the time. If I'm a sales rep and I finish onboarding, I'll remember, I don't know, 15 or 20% at the most of onboarding, right? I mean, that's humans, right? We'll remember maybe 20% of our formal learning. Mm-hmm. So then what about all the other stuff, right? So I learned it, I forgot most of it. I'm in the middle of a deal 6 months later and I'm like, this deal's stalled. Or I am about to jump on a pricing negotiation call and I don't know where to start. Like those things are really, really important. And I think enablement can really be, and I think should be, the person to push the envelope for that rep to be better or to be prepared for that meeting or for that objection or whatever they're handling. And so I think you're right. I mean, what is everybody saying right now? They're saying, we got to do more with less. Everyone says that. So how do we do that? I think it's like you said, it's A, evaluating the way that we're onboarding new reps, but B, it's evaluating the things that our reps are currently doing and maybe even trying to figure out ways to make it better or make it more efficient. I think it's a very also underutilized skill for these enablement roles.
Yeah. And if you're not talking to your reps and you're not getting that feedback and you're not trusted enough to receive that feedback from your reps, then you're not going to know what their real roadblocks are. Right.
100%.
And I think one of the best things that we did in the onboarding program that I was running was, I think that a lot of companies make a huge mistake when they put a seller through 3 weeks of boot camp or 4 weeks of boot camp and certification and then tell them to go sell. I think there's huge wasted opportunity there. Because one, sellers, especially if you're hiring somebody who is experienced, who's tenured, who already knows how to sell, they're going to just be totally disenchanted by the first 4 weeks. They're going to try to check the box and say,
I just need another product.
I just need to get through it, get this waste of my time out of the way so I can go sell.
Yep.
Right. And that's not how
Sure.
you want sellers to look at your onboarding program.
True.
So I think one of the best things that we did was we actually had sellers doing their job from day one. We
Hmm.
said, here's your list of accounts. Go look through it. Who do you know? What emails can you start sending out?
I like
And
that.
when we gave sellers a list of accounts on day one, it was like Christmas for them.
Oh, for sure.
They're like, I've never been at a company where I've actually had a list of prospects to go look at.
That's
Now,
really
mind
cool.
you, we were hiring people who were experienced in the space.
Yeah.
They're, you know, enterprise sellers know what they're doing. They don't need the sales 101, right? So if you're working with people who are a little bit more green, you might have to have some of that in place before you go shove them out into
And
cold
definitely don't give
email
them the good
world.
ones. Don't give them the good
Yeah.
accounts. Yeah. Yeah.
But they got to
I
start
like that.
actually going through their account list, identifying the top accounts, working with their SDR on here's the plan that we're going to go through together. And what we did was we actually delivered the enablement for each part of the sales process, right? So week one is a lot of like, here's the culture, get your HR stuff done, get your, you know, trainings done that you have to get done. But here's your account list. You can start looking through it, start prospecting. Okay, week two, we're going to actually start to help you certify on the stuff you need to talk about so that when you actually get those meetings booked, you kind of know what you're talking about. And I told him, I was like, if you book a meeting week one and you have a call like next Tuesday and you don't still know what it is, what the crap we do or how to talk about it, it's okay. We'll get a manager on with you.
Yeah.
Somebody will ride along. We're not going to leave you out to dry.
Yeah.
But the sellers were so happy that they could start doing their job from day one. And because we were enabling them on those different topics while they were applying it, their retention of
so
how
much
to
better.
do those things was so much better. Don't show me
100%.
how to put a quote together until I actually have to go put a quote together. Don't talk to me about how to do a demo until I actually have to go do a demo.
Mm-hmm.
And so
we call that situational enablement.
Yes,
Here,
situational enablement.
Shameless plug.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, agreed. Completely
Or
agree.
just-in-time enablement, right? There's lots of different things. So there's learning the thing in the moment, but then there's also being able to reference the thing in the moment, right?
Totally.
So we were putting in different things like within this sales ops, you know, Slack channel, if there were common questions or queries, we would find ways to surface those things when people needed it. And that's also how you scale, right? So taking that just-in-time, small chunks when you're using them approach, that's just an adult learning or really any learning mechanism that works no matter where you are. I think there's this like weird expectation we have of sellers that like we can just thrust a 2-hour webinar at them and then they're suddenly going to be better at their job. Like, I don't want to watch a 2-hour webinar. You don't want to watch a 2-hour webinar. Nobody watched 2-hour video on YouTube. Why are we expecting sellers to consume content?
And then we get called lazy when we don't watch it. We're like, come on, that's not fair. You wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's
good.
like, you know, that was, I think, a program that was really well executed from a
like that
learning.
Did you question? Because I want to dig into this because I really like this. I think there needs to be some guardrails for sure, which you mentioned. These are experienced reps. So you can't do this for everybody. Because like I would, my VP of sales would be like, hey, I don't want you burning good accounts. You know, there's some guardrails for sure, but I like it a lot because something I think it was Brian from Any Road we had on here. Shout out to Brian. And he talked about this concept of creating space. That's like one of his enablement strategies for his reps is to create space for them to fail, actually. And so he would talk about, we would find, you know, these like, I don't want to say crappy leads, but like, you know, less risky leads if we lose them. And those would be the ones that we would practice cold calling on. Right. And so we would have reps who maybe weren't comfortable with cold calling. And this is a basic example, but like we would have them call those and work on different cold call scripts and strategies and stuff like that. And that was creating a space to fail and it being okay. So I really like this concept because I think it is the way people learn. You know, it's just, I used to sell LMSs. And so I learned a lot about learning strategy and, you know, and I also was an education major in college, which is crazy to think about now. So I know learning strategy very well. And so that, you know, the 2010 model, which is, you know, 10% is learned formally, 20 is learned socially, and 70s through experience. It's not perfect science, but it's about right. But that experience part is so critical. And most reps don't get that experience until, call it 3 months probably, until they're like really, really out of onboarding. And then you expect me to close a deal within a month of that in order for me to like show value of my ramp time. Seems a little crazy, right? Seems a little crazy. And so I think there is this, by the way, I haven't heard this. I haven't heard anyone else talk about this, like day one, letting reps get into the trenches, if you will. I really like it. I'm curious, did you do like a ride along? Like, were you co-piloting with them? Was there another rep that you like assigned them a buddy to co-pilot with? Like what's that process look like? Because I think it's a really interesting concept.
Yeah. So it was a combination of things. So the first was that we had live sessions that would walk through each piece as it was happening. So for example, we started with like Salesforce 101. What does our process look like? How is that reflected inside of Salesforce? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
We then also had support from an asynchronous perspective in here's a, learning inside of our LMS that supplements what you learned. And like, maybe here's a thing to go apply it. Since you're already starting to, send emails and all that stuff, you're starting to do your job. You actually have the opportunity to like go create a opportunity from a contact or things like that. Right. So there's that piece. We did have, onboarding buddies. Everybody was assigned a buddy at the very start because reps love to learn from other reps. That is the other thing that I have 100%. Held very close to my heart throughout my enablement career. And anytime that I can have another rep educate a new rep over me talking at them,
especially a good one,
it's going to be so much more effective. And 100%. So for that reason, we also incorporated different examples or calls from our call intelligence tool that we used to give people examples of, hey, here's actually our top rep giving that first meeting pitch. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, you don't have to stick to the script, but here's the talking points, right? And so there was a combination of live sessions, asynchronous learning, supporting resources that were served up at the right time while they were doing the job, but also periodic check-ins with that support team, whether it was me or the onboarding buddy. For the manager, we had a check-in meeting with the manager, 30 days in to say, how are we looking on our leading indicators? Like, I think that the other really important thing that our reps absolutely loved was knowing exactly from day one what their goals were and what they could do in that first 30 days that would set them up for success by the time their ramp was over.
Yeah.
How many meetings do I need to book? What's my progress towards that? Yep. Right? Like that, I got so much good feedback from reps who were like, I need to know the right things to go do to be successful. If you tell me what those are, I will go 112% to hit those goals. But if I don't know what they are, or I don't have visibility into it, they can't do those right things.
I think that's a big takeaway for anybody. I say this a lot. Reps just need to know what good looks like, or what great looks like, really. Let me know what great looks like so I can emulate that, put my own spin, flavor, tone, all that kind of good stuff on it. But I just need to know. And then also, I think what you just mentioned kind of hits home for me too, which is I need to know what to focus on. Like, what should I be doing? Because there are, I mean, most roles, what people don't realize is most roles are very project driven, right? Like most roles within an organization, most jobs in general are very project driven, right? Sales is not a project per se, right? Like I don't have this paper thing that I got to turn in, or I don't have a deadline on this new code that I'm supposed to release, or I don't have deadlines per se. I have quarters, but in those quarters, there's 1,000 things I could do. Right.
Yeah.
I have one job and it's to close deals within that quarter. Okay. So then what? Right. So what I've learned is like what makes a really good rep from a great rep from a good rep is the great reps just know where to focus. Right. They're good. Like they're good when they're focused too, but they just know where to focus. Whereas a good rep is just kind of throwing a bunch of stuff on the wall and just hoping it sticks. A bunch of activity. They're very activity driven. But so if enablement could help me guide my attention, right? That would be awesome, right? Like these are the accounts you should be focusing on, and within those, which I probably should know that, but within these accounts, these are the things you should be doing. These are the processes that we have in place so that you can achieve this and this and this. This is the tools that you should be doing that. Like just giving me focus is a really, really, I think, critical part of it, because that's one of the hardest parts for a rep.
Yeah, I think we could definitely have more empathy for sales reps. Not just enablement, but across the organization, in understanding just how much is being thrown at a rep at the same time, all the time. And there are different ways that you can mitigate that, right? You can say, okay, we're going to take all of the communication that's directed towards sales reps and put it in one newsletter, right? That's one way that people try to help focus reps' attention or help them know what to focus on. But I think that you're so right in that reps are getting thrown so many different pieces of information all the time. If I was in that seat, I would not know what it is to focus because you've got legal. Yeah, you've got legal saying like, hey, we updated this process. So next time you go talk to someone, use this new language so that you're using the right NDA. Or, hey, product marketing is like, we're going to be launching this new product in a month, but I need you to go start talking to your customers about it.
Yeah.
There's so many things all the time. Not to mention, your manager is at you like, hey, what's your pipeline? What's your pipeline? Right? that's what reps care about, right? What's my pipeline look like? All the stuff is going to be secondary, right? Unless you can say this is going to help grow your pipeline.
Yep. Well, and then multiply everything you just said by X number of deals you have in your pipeline.
Yes.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Which, especially if you're a transactional seller,
oh,
holy moly, that's going to be a lot. If you're in SMB, right, you might have 10 or 12 deals running at once. And
easily.
To somebody who's not in a sales role, that might not sound like a lot. But if I think about trying to run 12 projects at once, that makes my head spin.
Yeah, that's what you're doing for sure. It's a good point. Actually, that's a great point. That's exactly what you're doing. It's 12 individual projects with different deadlines and different expectations and different people. Yeah, for sure.
Different requirements, and oh, by the way, your timelines are shifting because now X customer said, oh, now we have to bring this person in, or talk to my boss. They love the tool, but we can't do it until our budget resets in 3 months. Talk to me then.
Sally, this session should have been called Therapy for Will. This exactly, you're nailing it. That's exactly how reps feel. And so I think there's like a mutual understanding that has to happen. I think a lot of enablement and sales reps are starting to like have better relationships. There's still some dissension for sure that I can see, but it feels like the gap is closing and there's a better understanding of what reps need versus also I think enablers are starting to do a better job of setting boundaries. I think it's really important too. Like, this is what I will do. This is what I'm not responsible for. I'm here for the reps. I'm here to focus on helping them close deals. Kind of end of the story. That's it, right? That's what I'm here for. I think I think there's some really cool revelations happening within the enablement and sales communities right now. It's gonna take time, but I think it's happening. All right, last question for you, and then we'll wrap it. I ask everybody this. A little switch of gears, but it's still on the same topic. A lot of people are getting laid off, or a lot of people who have been laid off are starting new positions within enablement. If you were joining a new company, I've asked 2 types of questions on this. Which one do I want to do? Let's do this one. What are the first 2 or 3 things you would do when you started? Like, no questions asked, day 1 through 10. These are the first 3 things you're going to do within your new role within enablement. Let's say you run the whole enablement program. What are you doing?
Yeah, I think where I start is understanding at a deep level the current state.
Yep.
And that's not just about like, what are we doing today? It's what are we doing today? What are people struggling with today? Why was I brought here in the first place, right? If there's a particular pain point that they were like, we need to go hire somebody to go to, dig in and understand that thing forwards and backwards and upside down. Talk to all of the people that interact with it, right? So my first thing is to audit the current state. And I do that in a qualitative way and a quantitative way.
Smart.
So the qualitative way is to go talk to all the people. When I started at Thoughtbot, my first thing I did was I went and talked to all the managing directors and I said, if I could do one thing for you to make your job easier or to help you move towards your goals, what would it be? What roadblock would I take away? What thing would I improve? So getting that sort of qualitative perspective is super duper important. The second thing that I do with the quantitative perspective is go audit the sales data. Whatever the CRM is,
close rate,
fresh sales. Y'all probably haven't even heard of fresh sales, most of you. But it is a CRM out there. It's not HubSpot or Salesforce, but it works very much the same way. Yeah, and so I learned the CRM in like 2 weeks, forwards and backwards, upside down, because I was like, I need to figure out what data we have. Is it accurate? What are the, there's sort of the standard levers that we refer to in enablement, like, things like number of opportunities, close rate, that sort of stuff. What is the current state of that? Are we even measuring that today? Right? Figuring out what data you have so that you can go build the systems that you need to build to be able to track what you need to track. And that's like thing number 1, right? Yeah. And actually with the data piece, when I came into this role, I did a full audit of all the marketing channels. I said, okay, here's the website, here's our SEO, here's our social media, here's our email marketing, did like a health check on everything based on 5 years of practitioner experience in different marketing roles. On the enablement side, I looked at the data, I did that qualitative feedback, but then I said, okay, let's go validate what I'm hearing with this quantitative feedback. What I found was that a lot of our data wasn't even structured in the way that I could go validate that. So job number 1 was to sort of rebuild our field structure and identify what we needed to do in our CRM to ensure we had the data we needed, that we were tracking stuff. And I actually told my boss, I said, I can't tell you what we should prioritize working on because we don't have the data to be able to say that. So that is now priority number one, is getting our data in order. Once I'm able to actually analyze that, then I can tell you, this is where our gap is, or this is where we have the most opportunity for growth.
It's awesome. I think that's a great answer. You gotta know where you've been, and you gotta know where
Mhm.
the team wants to go in order for you to do your job effectively, for sure.
Mhm.
No doubt
Yeah.
about it. And having the
yeah.
data systems in place, I think, is huge because you need to measure, like you said, you need to measure what's been working and what isn't, but also you need to be able to measure your impact. I mean, I mentioned a minute ago, like it's still important. So you got to have the data there to help show the impact that you're having, or to show, hey, what I'm doing isn't working. Let's pivot. Right. I mean, that's the reality too. I don't think we talk about that enough, but like sometimes what you do isn't going to work. You need to know that. Right. And so you can
Mhm.
change. Right. Very important. Sally, this was awesome. It was as good as expected, to be honest. I was expecting to be great, and it was great. Thanks for coming on. Tell the viewers and listeners where they can find you, where they can connect. And I mean, I'm gonna see you in a couple weeks, so
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll let you tell
Well,
everybody else
thanks,
where they can find
Will.
you. Of course.
Thanks for having me on. Super fun. So I guess if anybody wants to connect with me, I'm all over LinkedIn. So you can look me up on there. And I will actually also be speaking at the Sales Enablement Society experience or
Ooh,
conference we're having in October in San Diego. So I will be having a breakout session on building your credibility and getting people to just freaking listen. And we're going to learn from Aristotle on how to do that. So
wow.
stay tuned, folks. It's going to be
I
exciting.
like that. I'm excited. I will be there. I'm gonna make sure I'm there.
Very nice. I'm so
Awesome.
excited.
Well, I'll see you in a couple weeks, Sally.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Will.
Thank you. Bye bye.